Hello, everyone. We are having our premiere of the Lifesavers Ambassadors International USA Roundtable here at the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women. We have convened some 20 women to actually go over and tell us where they are in their industries and what are their positions on climate change. I'm going to call on each of my guests to speak out on a particular topic, and then we're going to discuss those topics at our roundtable. What we're going to begin with is an introduction of each of our speakers, and they will introduce themselves. That way you will know who they are, what industry that they hail from, and what their title is in the particular company or with the particular corporation that they work for. We will begin with Dr. Joy Vaughn of Florida. Dr. Vaughn. Please unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Dr. Joy Vaughn from Florida. I work in the personal development industry doing transitional coaching, particularly for executives, entrepreneurs, and veterans. And the name of my company is Barron's Production, Inc. And that's what we do, coaching online and in person.
Thank you, Dr. Vaughn. Next, we will go to Yolisa Molefi. If you could unmute yourself.
Hello, I am Yolisa Molefi, CEO of SNC Tax. We provide business compliance and tax services in South Africa, Cape Town.
Thank you. Next, we will go to Vera Thomas. If you could unmute yourself, Ms. Thomas.
Hello, my name is Vera Thomas, and I am the owner of Instilling Greatness. I'm a coach and a speaker and a trainer working with parents and their children.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. Next, we will go to Dr. Robin. Could you unmute yourself, Dr. Robin?
Thank you. Hi, I'm Dr. Robin Odegaard. I'm a high-performance psychologist at Champion Performance Development. I'm a smoke jumper. I parachute in and fight fires from the inside. I'm based in the US, and I do work all over the world.
Thank you, Dr. Robin. Next, we will go to Ann Metcalf.
Hi, I'm Ann Metcalf, and I'm a gut health and a gardening advocate. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Catherine Tuitt.
Hello, everyone. I'm Catherine Tui, MBE, and I'm here joining you from London in England. And I am in the legal profession, and I specialize in wills and probate and estate succession planning. And I work with companies and give advice through Kate Tui Wills and Conveyancing.
Thank you, Mrs. Tui. Next, we will go to Ms. Marlo Mans.
Hello, everyone. My name is Marlo Mans. I am the CEO and founder of My Heart, New Love, and I focus on human kindness, empathy, and in children from infancy to 120 years plus.
Thank you, Ms. Mans. Next, we will go to Bailan Mahino.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bailan Mahino. I am the founder of Global Dream Makers, where we help you design and live the life you want, the life worth living.
Thank you, Ms. Mahino. Next, we will go to Jennifer Green Blair.
Hello, I am Jennifer Green Blair. I'm an educator, mindfulness, and wellness specialist, and I'm here to talk about the power of mindfulness in our lives and in action through an initiative that I started called the Global Green Action Project.
Thank you, Mrs. Green Blair. Next, we will go to Angela Lee.
Hello, I'm Angela Lee. I'm a children's author. My industry is self-development, and what I do is teach children emotional intelligence through fairy tales.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. Next, we will go to Kathy Dirksen.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kathy Dirksen. I am the founder of Inspired Tenacity. I am a wealth and success coach. I came out of the financial planning industry and now have my own business where I focus on helping midlife women rediscover their brilliance and take control of their finances and the rest of their life. So I'm excited to be here. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, we will go to Dr. Kat, Water Citizen.
Hi, folks. My name is Dr. Kat Schreier, founder of Water Citizen Foundation and the Virtual Water Educational Lab, where we empower water and sustainability leaders to create their own virtual water education presentations, programs, and events so they can educate, engage, and enroll people into solutions for a more sustainable world.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kat. Next, we will go to Dr. Nasike Unkoko.
Thank you. My name is Dr. Nsiki Ngcoco. I'm from South Africa in the Eastern Cape. I'm an author and a coach in leadership training and development. I'm the founder of Power to Lead with Integrity, the Incorporated and Foundation, and you operate in the space of training and leadership, ethical and authentic leadership, and coaching in personal mastery. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nkoko. Next, we will go to Dr. Onika Shirley.
Hello, my name is Dr. Onika Shirley. I'm the founder and CEO of Action Speaks Volume Incorporated. I'm a procrastination strategist, behavior change expert in the industry of coaching and speaking.
Thank you, Dr. Shirley. Next, we will go to Danielle Bengano.
Hello, everyone. My name is Danielle Bengono. I'm an environmental engineer specialized in sustainability management. I'm also the founder of Fair Green. Fair Green actually is going to tackle all environmental issues and produce green energy in Cameroon.
Thank you so much, Ms. Bengano. Our first question, roundtable participants, is going to be on what disaster risk mitigation is in place in your business, your community, or your country. Our primary speakers on this will be Jackie Zaccoli, Angela Lee, Dr. Kat Schreier, Catherine Tuitt, and Ann Metcalf. We'll go to you first, Jackie Zaccoli.
Yeah, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Jackie Zaccoli. I am a catalyst for spontaneous combustion in that I am here to create the excitement of awareness to spark action and change. And my business is Manifesting Global Solutions Group. My answer to the question of mitigation of what's going to disaster mitigation, risk mitigation, is that the question, Yvonne?
That's correct.
Okay. I think the most important part in this whole concept is communication. Communication is the core of mitigating the disasters in our businesses and our globe. And thank you to the pandemic for allowing communication to become more obvious, and through the power of Zoom and the ability for us to communicate at levels that we never knew we had ability to do that. And I think it's been a blessing in disguise. And I feel that this is the most important part is how to handle it so that we might maintain truth and trust. And that's the challenge. And I think it's also the solution to what we're doing in being able to find out our needs, as well as to keep businesses afloat. Those that pay attention are going to make it. Those that refuse to use the Zoom and to communicate are going to fail. So it's pretty cut and dry.
Okay, well, thank you for that perspective. Next, we will go to Angela Lee. Can you give us your perspective on the disaster risk mitigation in your areas?
Well, interestingly enough, I was a I am a wildfire disaster survivor. And I also worked in government at the time, so I can speak to the importance of communication. I recall on the night of the fire that news outlets were reporting all kinds of crazy things, but you could go on Facebook and you could see this neighborhood is gone, that neighborhood is gone, because your friends live there and they were posting. The government had purchased a software to be able to send disaster notifications to cell phones, but they had not implemented it. This was in 2017 when 50% of the people used only cell phones. Communication in a disaster is primary and key. And if I had a dream for governments to adopt, it would be to make sure that they are able to use all communication channels, and the lives that could have been saved if the disaster notification went out to cell phones. Who knows?
Okay, thank you so much for that. Now we'll go over to Dr. Kat Schreier for her position on disaster risk mitigation.
Yeah, in a sense, I want to echo and take a little further the responses we've already heard, because I actually have had a 30-year career as a water resources engineer, hydrogeologist, water planner, and policy expert, and so often was the only woman in the room at senior levels. And there was sort of this attitude that, we're going to work on the technical stuff. You're a woman, you're good at communications. Why don't you go do the communication part? And the thing is, the two have to go together. It's not a matter of, we figure out the technical solutions, we figure out the policy solutions and the programs, and then go get some communications people to blast it out. It has to be a two-way conversation, or really a multiple party communications. We have to have the right communications to the right parties at the right time. So what's happening at the federal level, at the state level, at the local level, what's happening among different agencies, what's happening between the technical people and the policy people and the key people within the communities, as well as individual homeowners. How do you, in businesses and whatnot, how do you actually use communications and hear from local stakeholders, hear from local communities, and incorporate that back into the policies that we have? So often when we talk about climate disaster risk mitigation with respect to women in particular, it's as women as the victims of these issues. And what I really like about what's happening this year's UN program is it's focusing also as women as being part of the solution. And so often we are also thinking about not just how do we run the models and how do we design the
That's good.
levies or whatever it is that we're having to do, but actually how to take the human factor into consideration and incorporate that into the solutions that we're providing, so that, because disasters affect all of us and we have to be able to work together and have that as an interactive form. We can do that with virtual programs and events. We have to stop treating the internet as a place to blast out information and actually create engagement with stakeholders, with professional peers, with policymakers, break down the silos and bring us all together.
Okay, excellent. Catherine Tuitt, we're going to come over to you and ask you, what is your position on disaster risk mitigation in your place of business, community, or within the country of the United Kingdom?
Thank you. Well, in the UK, and particularly locally in London, where I am in the capital, we have one of the world's largest flood barriers, which is called the Thames Water Barrier. I can see Dr. Katz shaking her head in agreement. And it's a huge feat of engineering. And the Thames Water Barrier is opened every week, and they receive information from the meteorologists, also oil rigs, ships, and other input from scientists, which give them an insight of when the barrier should be raised, because London has this huge river which runs through London, and on a local level we have been flooded upon many occasions, and many of my colleagues and friends have lost their homes to flooding. Many parts of London are built upon floodplains, and so the Thames Barrier has helped us to mitigate that climate change, because we have seen the rising of the North Sea, which affects the River Thames. And over the last few years, the rising has meant that we need to open the barrier more often to mitigate against the flooding in London. The other thing about London is it has many aging buildings and infrastructure. And whilst London has that historical beauty of architecture, those buildings are not always the most sustainable in terms of heat and flooding. And so those are the type of things that we've been doing to mitigate. In my industry, in the legal profession, we have also been taking cases, litigating against local authorities, against London government and national government for clean air on behalf of our clients, because we have seen a huge rise in respiratory diseases, and those have impacted particularly our children. And we have taken class claims as mothers against the polluters, where the government are allowing polluting diesel vehicles, for example, into areas where there's schools. And we have won many of those legal victories through the courts, and vehicles are now banned from certain areas, residential areas, and from being outside or passing by our schools. I hope that gives you a bit of insight into what we've been doing.
Oh, wonderful. Now we'll go over to Ann Metcalf. And if you could give us your position on disaster risk mitigation.
Great. Thank you, Yvonne. It's a great topic to bring more awareness to all of us. I live in Metro Vancouver on the west coast of Canada. part of the ring of fire with potentials of earthquakes and tsunamis. And throughout the province of British Columbia, our other disaster risks are floods, landslides, and severe weather conditions, especially winds and rain on the West Coast. And for me, my business is home-based, and I also teach elementary school. And some of those schools are an hour away from where I live. And so what the schools are doing is that the kids have fire and earthquake drills several times a year. And all the older schools are now being upgraded to current earthquake standard proofness. And many schools actually have containers that house basic supplies of snacks and waters in the case of an earthquake. And I now have a copy of our own In It Together, a neighborhood preparedness guide. So that is my personal next call to action, is to do that for my own home. And I think as citizens, we've been a bit lax in taking on the personal responsibility. The government has its plans for emergencies, but I think we need to be more aware. And in Metro Vancouver, we've got 2 million people, and many live in a floodplain, which city planners and provincial authorities have allowed that to happen over time. And for me, one of the big issues is food security. And it's for when you have any kind of a serious disaster, that's an issue. And I think home gardening needs to be encouraged much more. And we need to be teaching kids how to grow food and connect with the earth and where their food comes from. And I'm not sure that that's actually been addressed enough. My dream is having every school with a vegetable garden. I think that would be awesome because it's just a win-win-win for everybody. And we had some serious flooding last fall due to kind of more than normal rainfall. And it destroyed entire farms, livestock, chickens, eggs, and it caused a shortage in Vancouver. This is food growing up the valley. And all of a sudden, store shelves were having to ration. Well, we had to ration gas, and we had to ration some of the food because it wasn't reaching us, because there was road washouts. We lost a major bridge. So this whole aspect of transportation and how we get our supplies into Vancouver from outside the province, whether it's across Canada, from the States, or even from overseas. So I think this whole risk mitigation effort, I mean, we can save money, if you want to look at economically, to the cost of this post-disaster recovery. And so we've got action from our government and our own personal actions that we need to be responsible for. So thank you very much.
All right. Well, thank you. And thank you so much, speaker panel, for that. And now I would like to open it up for, you've got 5 minutes. And so I'm going to open it up to the actual, to the entire roundtable, to, if you have any questions, of the panels, of the responses that they had, or if you have your own statement that you would like to, and let's try to keep that, to more than 30-40 seconds per person. So the question is, what disaster risk mitigation is in place in your business, community, or country? And that's what each of them addressed very well. So are there any other questions, comments, or remarks to be made for this particular question?
I'll add a comment if no one's going to jump in. And I live in the same part of the world as Anne. And so I completely agree with everything she said about how it was such a wake-up call. The massive flooding we had, it was beyond anything anyone could imagine. And it literally shut down our whole region. And so I think it really was a huge wake-up call that we were not prepared for, that the local governments, provincial governments, federal governments were not at all ready for that level of disaster to hit an area like ours. So it definitely was a huge wake-up call for us. And I think there's a lot of learning and a lot of changes that will be coming in the next, hopefully the next year.
Yes, Yvonne. If I may comment, I think I heard a lot of people talking about communication, and I'm thinking of us in South Africa, because I hear people saying, you know, the most impactful were the Facebooks, which is the social media. And yeah, I think with us in South Africa, because we still a lot of areas where disasters happen, which is mostly the rural areas, lack of communication is an issue, because you know the online services and all those kinds of things are very scarce. So which means people don't get to have the information as quickly as they need to. So I really take note of that. You know, it really is a wake-up call to hear that, you know, the thing that we're struggling with, which is access to information, is what could help in many situations.
Let me jump in quickly there, Ambassador Yvonne, and add on to Yolisa. In the same country, South Africa, even before the pandemic, I did an article on change management, that the infrastructure is a serious problem, that the whole country is not ready for the fourth industrial revolution, let alone after the pandemic. People are stuck at home without communicating. The youth is very depressed behind scenes. Communication, they can't even connect online. Water, the water, even where I am, I wake up sometimes, I open the tap, the water is brown. The whole city, I'm in city center, the mayor is in, you know, situation, and the power. Anytime my power can go off now, and I pray that I finish the session. I mean, such things really, there is no solution at hand. And it just talks with the government, but we have to wake up as the communities and do something about it. Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Joy, you wanted Dr. Joy, and then we'll take another comment from Dr. Cat.
Thank you. I think what I'm really present to that's very shocking is how much we've taken for granted over the years. It's like all of this has been happening, but we have not paid attention. And now it's like the floodgates have opened up, and not until the dam was broken that we were seeing, oh, there was a problem with the dam. So I'm very happy to hear that we're at this point, because now we can put things in place so that we have a better future for the future generations.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Dr. Cat?
You know, I just want to follow up, because what's happened with over history of our environmental laws is, by and large, these laws happened, you know, in climate mitigation, everything else. These happened from the ground up. These were grassroots movements that happened in, you know, in the US and many other countries, where citizens took it upon themselves to teach each other. Experts were teaching, having teach-ins. The first Earth Day in the US was a series of teach-ins throughout the United States, making people aware. And all of these public, you know, opportunities for members of the public, for stakeholders to be part of the process were developed. Now, unfortunately, when the internet started to be used more and more, when people are spending more and more time on their screens, we've lost some of that, because the, you know, the scientists, the engineers, the policy analysts, they're in their little bubbles, they're in their little, you know, agencies and institutes and other organizations, and they've been separated from people who can provide more of that perspective. You've got these kind of professional facilitator types that, you know, do these public meetings and things. And then you've got people in the communities that, yeah, we've done a great job of raising awareness. So a lot of people are aware of the issues, and especially when they see it in their own backyard, right? We've heard people who've had their own homes flooded, who've been, who've experienced wildfires, right? People are aware, but then it's going that next step. Creating a 30-second TikTok video is not going to change policy. It's not going to lead to the adoption of new technologies. We need to really bring those people who are interested and aware into the process, and we can do that much more effectively with virtual presentations, programs, events. And for those people who want to go that next step and say, yeah, I'll raise my hand. I want to serve on a stakeholder committee for my community. I want to be part of the solution. We're not creating those opportunities, and we need to use the internet better to provide those opportunities to people who say, yes, I want to be part of the solution for my community, for people in the agencies, the institutes, the utilities, the research institutes say, yeah, we want to actually work with people, not just blast out messages.
Okay.
Hello, I'm Jennifer Green. I'm an educator, mindfulness and wellness specialist, business lifestyle strategist, and I'm also the author of a #1 international best-selling book for children right here to help them have less stress and anxiety and more fun through the power of mindfulness in their lives. So I'm all about empowering global family to incorporate mindfulness strategies into our lives so that we can have our most resilient and happy life. Having said that, I like to go one step further, and I've created an initiative called the Global Green Action Project to help empower a global community through mindful, compassionate education in action. And this helps empower our children and youth through resilient leadership strategies in the classroom as well as outside the classroom, so that we can all expedite healing for all life on this planet, helping animals, environment, and humanitarian initiatives in the most amazing ways. So we look forward to seeing you in our conversation, in our discussion here at this amazing event. Until then, take care, be well. Bye for now.
I like that. Very good. That concludes that question number 1. And now we'll move on to our number 2 question. And that is, how easy is access for yourself and other women in the time of climate change disaster? So how easy is it for you to get access to the necessary services, to any additional funding that you might need, or any of the assistance? We heard some of that, in the comments. Dr. Kat just brought out, about that next step, that stakeholder. Well, how easy would it be for you to get to the people in your community, maybe to put something together or to work on something together? How easy is that access? We're going to go to our primary speakers on this. It's going to be Kathy Dirksen, Jennifer Green Blair, Dr. Robin, Danielle Bengano, and Marlo Mans. So we'll come to Kathy Dirksen first.
Oh, good question. So how easy is it for women to access the help they need at times of, I think that COVID has been another wake-up call for us, and we've discovered that it has been women that are the ones that are kind of on the short end of the stick as far as access to services, access to support in any way. So I think it's definitely something that needs some improvement. There's no doubt about that. And that's one of the main reasons that I left my corporate job and went into my own business, because I feel that women are not getting the support they need. They're not accessing just the basic support of feeling that they can speak their voice and be heard, and to actually focus on what the things are that are important to them right now and going forward. Really need to focus on and bring services to and help women to build their confidence in speaking up and saying what they need, because I think that's a big part of it too, that we're so busy looking after everybody else that we're often not focusing on speaking up with what we think needs to happen next. So thank you for that question.
Okay, well, great. We're going to go next to Jennifer Green Blair.
Hello, thank you. That is such a wonderful question. I'm in Southern Ontario, Canada, so it's an interesting perspective that we have here. One of the things that I'd like to address, and my main focus right now in this particular discussion, is the powerful tool we have in incorporating mindfulness into our own personal lives and into all the action that we take in community, local and global community, to help empower our children and youth and our global family to expedite healing on this planet through environmental, animal, and humanitarian initiatives. And this can only be done when we truly incorporate mindfulness in action, especially in education. And education is the fundamental, or the foundation, if you will, to get us started on that right path. A lot of people incorporate mindfulness into their lives, and into the educational system, but they don't get that extra step of mindfulness in action. And what I mean by that is, let's go back a little bit. Let's talk about some of the benefits that mindfulness has, because a lot of people have misconceptions of mindfulness. And I'm just going to kind of just briefly skim some of the benefits here, because it is so incredibly powerful as a strategy that is easily accessible. So when we talk about how easy is it to access, mindfulness is an easy tool to access, especially where I am in the school system. We are incorporating slowly but surely, we've been incorporating it more and more over the years, and in various community services. However, there's still that element that's missing in terms of mindfulness in action. And so going back to the benefits of mindfulness research has shown that it helps with focus. So it helps children and youth learn better as well as adults. It helps with social emotional learning, which means that we have deeper and more meaningful connections with others. It builds community. It empowers us to be able to communicate and be our best selves with others. And ultimately, it helps build our empathy and our compassion. And those key elements are the power to changing our world and healing our planet through everything we do. So having said that,
wonderful.
Having said that, if I can just add one more thing, that compassionate piece is so key when it comes to dealing with really tough issues like industrial farming, for instance, which is climate change, how it impacts climate change. So I'm just going to leave it at that, but it's really, really powerful in terms of really dealing with those tough conversations that most people don't want to talk about, because we only want to scratch the surface when it comes to mindfulness, and we have to use those tools to deal with those tough issues.
Okay, well, thank you for that. We're going to now go to Dr. Robin Odegaard to give us her perspective on how easy is access for yourself and other women in a time of climate change disaster.
Yeah, thank you so much for this question. When I think about it, I'm thinking more about the basic life-sustaining needs. And I know we heard a lot about communication. Are we getting the knowledge we need? And that makes me think, do we have our internet? Is the internet up? Do I have a TV that the internet's going to give me access to? Do I have a computer? Is the cell tower working? I mean, I have a cell tower that's 3/4 of a mile from my house. If it goes down, I have no cell service here. And that happens so much in disasters. Do I have access to the knowledge? The second thing I feel like is really important in these kind of basic life-sustaining needs, transportation. Okay, great. I know where they're handing out the emergency supplies. Can I get there? If you think about here in the US, public transportation at its best is unavailable, unreliable, and unsafe. That's going to get worse if we have a disaster of any, climate change type disaster. And particularly for women, if it's unsafe, it's going to be more unsafe for them if they have children that they are also trying to transport to get these life-sustaining, things that they need. So what are we doing about that? How are we helping people? If there's gas rationing, I live 20 minutes from a grocery store. Not a big deal unless I don't have gas. Now it's a problem. So I feel like those are kind of things that when we talk about disasters, if I don't know where to get help, that's not helpful. And if I can't get there, that's not helpful. So how are we managing that? And I think, Anne, you made the point about personal responsibility. I think we see neighborhoods really start stepping in for each other and saying, let me help you, let me take care of your kids. One of us will go and get the groceries. But during COVID, what I saw was that they were rationing supplies and they were only allowing 1 box per car. That means everybody has to take their car and go to wherever the place is, and you can't help each other as a neighborhood. I can't say, hey, I'll keep all the kids, you go get 3 boxes of groceries or whatever. And so I think that that's something we need to rethink when we think about disaster support, is how do we allow communities to come together in a way that makes sense to deal with these knowledge and transportation issues. So thank you for asking that question. It really helped me really think about it at a level I hadn't previously.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you so much for your response. Now we'll go to Danielle Bengano in Paris, and she can tell us, how easy is it to access for yourself and other women of any type of climate change disaster. Most certainly Paris is going through several different things, down through the millennia. So we'd like to hear from you.
Thank you, Yvonne, for that question. In my point of view, in my industry, it's a kind of vicious cycle. I mean, less attention is paid to the potential that lies within women's. They are not empowered with the knowledge, as you said, the infrastructure and the resources that could be adapted to the country, because each country is different. It's different. Me, I'm coming from a developing country, especially Cameroon. The issue related to the climate or the factor that affect the climate are not classified as top priorities. They are ignored, and when we want to talk about it, you cannot be received and no one deal with you. We are not like prepared for what is coming. We just like read maybe a message on TV, and we just feel it on ourselves. We might be aware of the acceleration of climate deterioration, yet the gap between what is done and what is said and reality is like really large. I mean, the action, there is no action at all. And actually, when you want to invest yourself in it, you are kind of discouraged at the end of the day. I guess that something else might be done in the air, water, and soil area, including everyone, while they could assume actually their responsibility and be part of this construction, be part of what could be done. It could be maybe by establishing connection amongst women in the community through associations, incubators, and create the channel for communication, because I'm really struggling every day with these issues. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Danielle. I'd like to now go to Marlo Mans on that same question.
I take a different approach because I have seen years ago when there was no way that women could even introduce ideals. And now I see that this day, they are not only introducing ideals, but they are making their own teams. And this is a good thing because their own creativity that they bring to the table, their own solutions, the fact that they are more in finance, science, engineer, and also mathematics has given them more power to walk in that direction. Years ago, that love was nowhere approachable. But today it's more approachable and their ideals are being heard. Now, I'm not going to say fully being heard, but it is approachable and it is introduced. And if you have that introduction that's able to pierce through some things that was, I want to say in a cautious way, manhandled, then you are able to say, hey, this is where I'm poking holes in it here. And this is where I'm poking holes in it there. And those little pokes of holes of love to say, this is for my children, this is for my land, this is for my community, has broadened. And I like that idea of them bringing their love together as a community, as an education, and for the environment, so that they continue to show love and say, this is not just a man's ideal, this is a woman's ideal. And I really like that ideal that they bring along the conditions and the solutions. They're not being one-sided, and their children see that, so it becomes generational. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's wonderful. Well, we've got some, there's a lot that has been put on the table in front of you panel. So now is that moment in time where we will open it up, and we have about 4 minutes. And I do see some, oh my goodness, I see several hands going up. Okay, I'll get right to it. Okay, let's go to Dr. Onika, and then I see Dr. Kat, and I see Jennifer. So let's start.
Great. I mean, this has been a great discussion, and I just wanted to add that, I think it is really important that we realize in the past, we have had limited access, but now women are taking bold action. We are now seeing that we have a voice. And if we stand in record numbers, that our voice can be heard. And I think having that confidence and believing that what we have to say matters, and what we're doing here, bringing that awareness from different perspectives, from different places, I think it is just going to add even more. So we have had limited access, but I think having more access to communication and to hear communication, to know that women are making a difference and that our voices matter. And so this is really great, that if we as women would take more bold action, not just have a great idea, but implementing those great ideas, that is going to make our access and our impact as it relates to climate change even the more impactful.
Thank you. Dr. Kat?
We're coming on the 2-year anniversary of when everything started shutting down with COVID, right? And one of the first things that we did when that happened, with our audience and lots of water and environmental and climate professionals, was we created a summit called Water and COVID-19, Your Home and Health. And part of that was about the fact that water, I knew people who knew how to design a wastewater treatment plant. We didn't know how to fix your toilet, right? We couldn't get plumbers. We couldn't get, housekeepers. We didn't know about sanitation within our own home and fixing our own water systems within our home. And so one of the things that we need to do is really to go beyond awareness to empowerment courses. We've been working on something like that on the lead issue. If you're familiar with, we've been working over decades of trying to get rid of the lead pipes in our water systems, and the utilities are able to get it out in their parts of the systems. But once it crosses into private property, homeowners need to do it for themselves, right? And over the last 2 years here in Washington, D.C., we've had lots of money come in, and throughout the U.S., lots of money has come in for private homeowners where the work will be paid for. Someone will come in and do the work for you, get rid of the lead pipes on your property, but you have to apply for the grant. So one of the things that we've been doing is creating a program called Community Lead Leaders, where you can actually find out, do I have lead in my home? How do I test it? How do I know? How do I protect myself and my family if there is? Am I eligible for these funds? How do I apply for them correctly so I actually get the money and get the support? And then, what's going to happen? Just walk people through the process instead of just throwing something up on the website and say, oh, look, we told people and they're not doing it. Now we want to go. They're talking about doing mandates, mandating homeowners to get rid of the lead when they haven't even tried to empower people to work with them to take the actions.
Angela, I see you have your hand up. Then we're going to Bailan, and then Dr. Nkoko.
So I really wanted to, Dr. Robin said really what's true for most people who are in the moment of a disaster. You may not have communication. You may not have transportation. You don't know how you're going to get food for the morning. You don't know where you're going to live. You have no place to go to. The hotels are full. There's just nothing open. And in those moments, it's the communities that truly make a difference, because the churches and the volunteer disaster organizations, they were on the street, they were there, and they handed out burritos and they handed out, things to help you take those first steps. because when your life, the rug of your life is pulled out from under you, you are in such a shock, and you can't, you have no idea what to do.
Okay.
It is so important that we as communities strengthen these kind of community responses, because they are what makes the difference.
Okay. Bylon?
Well, that's just really perfect from what I'm going to share, because women are proactive. We can see what's going to be coming down the pike, and so we do things ahead of time. And I know of a project in the Philippines that is doing a phenomenal job for food security. You know, there are millions of poor people in that country. And what they have done is they have started to, they started by distributing seeds to home gardeners. So you may be able to to grow your own food in containers, or even if you have a small plot of land. And so these city people, city dwellers, and even those out in the far reaches, were able to grow their own food. And then they found, oh, I have an excess. So they shared with their communities. Oh, what happens when these things go through their full cycle? Now they can gather their own seeds, and they will now be able to plant next year's crop or the next season's crop. And so it's flourished. And how is this happening? That to keep them involved, they're using social media. They're doing a Facebook group where, when I first started looking at it, they had 30,000 people, and this was just about 6 months ago. They have over 100,000 people now, so excited about growing their own food for the first time. So we can all do something like that. We can all do that, and they're creating a seed bank, so that they will have, as a nation, they will have food security, but it starts locally in the communities.
Okay. Dr. Nkoko?
Thank you so much again for this time. I would want to chime in and share in this fashion that if we can also, like we are doing now here, move from positions of transactions with talks like the government. They plan and plan and plan for 5 years, and nothing is going to the people. And the money that is there is used for driving around and planning, booking hotels and staying there. I would hate for us as women, even in this forum, to go that route of having sessions just like a transaction, that we tick a box, that we did something. We can start it right here as a community. If you have access to it's something like we can do. I'm talking about water. We don't have clean water here. Now, if there is a way of foundation and funding and grants and access where you are, let's connect, let's collaborate. $1 is to 17 or 18 rand in South Africa. $20 feeds one family at least a month. If you have that access, we have resources here. Resources I have is that I will not even drive around. People are not even on social media here. They are in the neighborhood. We have to walk to them. We have to organize ourselves here and work to deliver that food. So let's move. Let's have a transformation. That's my plea and charge to all of us now.
All right. We'll take Jennifer, and then we'll need to move on to question 3.
Such a wonderful question, isn't it? It's lots of discussion. I want to just bring it back to what Dr. Kat said earlier about the importance of having access to a virtual platform for education. So I want to tie it back into education and easy accessibility to a platform where globally we can access the resources we need to be empowered to help support our local and global communities in times of disaster. And what that might look like is, as Dr. Kat was mentioning, her platform that she's created, a virtual platform, and also that allows for real-time conversations where different communities around the world can come together and give each other support in times of disaster. So I know that there are various fundings out there in my part of the world as well that help support this even in the school system, which is, I'm going to tie back into education here as well. But a lot of people don't realize they can tap into that. I've been fortunate because I've looked into that and been able to implement strategies in my school system that have supported girls, to empower young girls and youth to be able to take action and implement strategies to sort of circumvent or prevent, if you will, issues if they were to arise. So it empowers children and youth in the educational system to just implement strategies that are current as a preventative if disasters were to occur. So having that virtual platform easily accessible for educational resources for all can really help support when that, if that disaster occurs, so that people have already been prepared. So yeah.
Wonderful preparation. Excellent. Well, thank you so much, panel, for that, for those responses on question number 2. That was very robust. And what I like, as we move through, everyone finds a comfort level at the round table. And so we have found our comfort level and we are moving forward with it. And it's wonderful. Going on to question number 3, what has and is the impact of climate change on your industry and business economic growth? And that is really getting at, has it increased the growth of your industry? Or has it decreased the growth of your industry? Has it declined? Or what have you seen in your industry? What have you been able to actually to do? We're going to go to Yolisa Molefe, Dr. Joy Vaughn, and then I'm going to call on a couple others to actually chime in on this particular issue. I'm going to call on Bailan Mahino to speak to this also. And I'm going to call on Dr. Robin also to speak in on this topic. So if we could begin with Yolisa.
Thank you, Yvonne, for this question. The impact that it's had on our industry. I belong to 2 industries, so I'm in the finance industry, but I'm also more into entrepreneurship. So which means on the entrepreneurship side, that's where we find a lot of disasters affecting businesses. For example, if we look at the rural areas, 35% of South Africa is rural land, so rural areas. And of those 35% of people, 52% are women. So which means 52% of the people in the rural areas are women. And women in rural areas have got businesses that are in farming, that are also, which means they need the water, which is a very scarce resource in our country. They also need access to transport, which then transport, because when it rains so hard, the rural infrastructure gets washed away. So which means people cannot move out of the areas that they live in to sort of conduct whatever business they are in. Besides that, there's also this concept that, for instance, when COVID-19 started and there was relief from governments, from also banks and other private institutions, the access to those grants did not reach the people that needed them, especially the women. Why? Because they were not compliant with regulations of being in business. So which brought us back to the fact that for us as a company, what we would like to do is to sort of form a business incubator, because what you need is the services that will enable each and every small business, especially women-owned businesses, whether it's in rural areas or in urban areas, they all get affected in the same way. Because at the end of the day, if you don't have a specific document, then you don't have access to different things that your business could be accessing at this time of disasters. So I think for most of the time, when we look at the tax, when we look at the accounting, when we look at business registrations, that's where most of our companies lacked in, especially small businesses, both in rural and urban areas. So it's all about education as well, because then we need to educate people who are in business, people who enter business, because South Africa has got a high rate of unemployment, and that also is looking at the small businesses to sort of reduce that number, because then it's found that private businesses are the only ones who can get South Africa out of its high unemployment rate. But then if those businesses failed during COVID and other disasters, then which means then they cannot do that function of making sure that unemployment is reduced. So yeah, that's my take on it, Yvonne.
Okay, well, thank you. Excellent. Dr. Joy?
Yes, thank you. So the three things I'm hearing through so far: communication, access, and hope. I think where I want to dwell in is hope, because I work in the personal development and mental health industry, and those two industries have exploded. Because when there's a disaster, we take for granted what comes like the butterfly effect. It does have an effect on our psyche. So even though we have programs and access, I can't even get up in the morning to access those programs because I'm so depressed. I'm anxious. I'm fearful. I don't know where to go. And even if you tell me where to go, I don't believe you. So there's a lot of mistrust that happens. It all happens in the brain because we weren't prepared. And even if we were prepared, we weren't prepared for the longevity of it. 6 months, I may have been able to handle it, but 2 years, the isolation. It has, in my industry, I've seen more divorces happen, right? Or abuse. This is what I'm dealing with at the very core. I know Dr. Robin might be able to speak to this too. But before we can even have people access anything, we've got to be able to deal with the human spirit. What has happened to us as a people as a result of climate change, whether it's lack of water or lack of food or lack of transportation, those things have a tremendous impact on us. And so it's hard to get up from that. And so that's what I'm noticing with my clients and even businesses that have failed and cannot resume because restaurants will go to business. They put every penny in that restaurant. What do I do now? And that's where people are at, beginning to think. I teach resilience. We are resilient people, but you need people to help you to be resilient. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. That makes a lot of sense. And what I'd like to do is, Catherine, you work in the industry, Ms. Tewitt, where you're dealing with wills and conveyances and, you know, the regulatory and that sort of thing. What have you seen with this whole climate change industry? Because there have been some industry leaders and businesses out there that do fare very well, you know, as Dr. Joy has said to us, you know, different types of industry, you know, they do very well in disasters. And then other industries, they do very poorly in disasters. What are you seeing?
Yes, Yvonne. What we're seeing is the impact of climate change and particularly the Paris Accord, you know, with the United Nations Climate Change Conference, how the legal industry and conveyancing and probate, wills, trusts respond to this. And what we see is our clients, on the one hand, they want us to advise them about ethical investments, how they can leave their beneficiaries investments which are ethical. So the industry has had to adapt to advising people about how they can invest in their money and their estate to tackle climate change. For example, they could invest in wind technology rather than buying shares in petroleum companies. They could invest their pension pot into solar panels rather than investing in other aspects of industries that will damage the planet. So you're seeing that the industry has to shift their mindset as how they advise, but you're also seeing that within the industry's practices and processes, the industry has to move more to digitalize because the legal industry historically has has a huge carbon footprint and uses a lot of wood, obviously from paper, you know, from the trees. They use so much wood. I'm sure, you know, those judgments you spoke about, Roe versus Wade. All these judgments are absolutely huge. If you go into the Supreme Court in the US or the UK's courts or a law library, you'll see that there is so much paper that is used. And so we really do need to work towards digitalizing more and more and electronic working. And we have shown through COVID we can do that because a lot of courts were online. And so we were doing litigation online throughout the pandemic. So it is possible for the future.
Okay. Dr. Robin, we want you to give us some, you know, okay, here's the parachute troopers coming in. So let's see how we're going to get this business and this economy going. You know, the disaster that happened. So now we know blue, the dam has broken. Now what?
So I'd like to talk broadly about kind of the coaching therapy, psychological support. You know, Dr. Joy spoke about the human psyche. I like to talk real broadly about that industry. And I feel like there's kind of a dichotomy of a problem here. One is that under stress, when people feel like they're uncertain, they don't know what's happening, they're more likely to pull back on where they spend their money and who they ask for help because they don't know who they can trust, they don't know where they can go, which is going to cause the industry broadly to contract because less people are willing to spend money. However, the need goes up under stress. People who don't know what's going on and who don't know where to get help and are under a lot of anxiety, they're the ones who need that coach, that therapy, that psychological support. And so I think that those of us who are in a space to be able to say, I'm available, whether it's online or on phone or, send a pigeon. I don't care. I'm willing to help you. I think for us, our industry, our businesses will grow. But if you don't have that ability to be flexible, to be agile, to meet your clients where they are, you're not going to find them and your business will die.
Okay. Bailan, how can you, just kind of, give us some, we want to dream big. We want to look at the bigger picture when we talk about, business growing. We know that businesses will fail during a climate disaster, pandemic, disasters and what have you. How do we pick back up? We had Dr. Joy talk to us about, how, the mindset and how the stress and, the anxiety. We had Dr. Robin to come in and say, fine, we need to, kind of buck it up and pull it together. Catherine talked to us about, what's going on, in the legal community, in the regulatory area of it. So now it's time for us to dream what can be. Now it's time to say, okay, how do we really get there? How do we get there? It all begins with a dream, I think.
Well, absolutely, absolutely. It all begins with focusing on our breath. Really, what is it that I am breathing into the world? What is it that is coming from within me that wants to be expressed out into the world? We've spent 2 years sitting there and looking at our lives and wondering, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? And so now we're seeing this great resignation, or some call it the big reshuffle, right? People are looking at what has importance to me, what has meaning to me, and let me do more of that. Let me find what are the solutions that I can provide, or what are the solutions I need to find, and who can help me? Who can I collaborate with? This is a year of collaboration. Who are we partnering with? And so people have opened up over the last 2 years to really redesign and refine where they're going. And I am so encouraged by this, because all of us can do this. All of us, all of us here on this panel may be doing exactly what we're here to do, but perhaps it's time to open up further and find out who else can we do it with. Because when we work together, especially women, when we work together, we get so much done. We have exponential results that occur. So why don't we open up to that? Why don't we open up to seeing, how can I celebrate what you want to do? How can we celebrate together? Because we have common things, we have common goals. And when we band together, oh my gosh, we are a force that can be reckoned with, or that can't be reckoned with, because we just fly, right? We just fly when we're working together, don't we? And so really it starts with looking inside. What is in your heart? We women can connect to that in ways nobody else can. What is in your heart that wants to come out? It's time. It's time to let that out. It's time to reach out to others and to say, yes, this is who I am. This is what I bring to the table. Yes, what do you bring? Let's do something together.
Wonderful, wonderful. I saw Dr. Joy. Did you want to add another comment before we went to the open forum?
Yes, I love what was just said. The collaboration is critical. Right now, it's time to do shift and pivot, right? And we have to pivot quickly. So, if we can find any way to teach people how to pivot quickly, because once you stay in the valley, anything happens, it's murky down there. So we want to get them out as quickly as possible. And I think that's the next trajectory, how to get them out and onward to where they need to go.
Okay, well, excellent. Now is the time on this particular question that we open it up to the floor. Please, got your hands up. Okay, we're gonna go to Jennifer, to Angela. Dr. Kat, and anyone else, just put your hands up. Okay, Jennifer, what do you want to talk about? Industry and business growth.
So I just want to tie this back into the importance of leadership, because what we're talking about is empowering people, whether they're children, youth, or adults, through a really effective leadership system. And that requires us to look at leadership on a whole new level, 2.0, if you will. And using that leadership to empower our children and youth so they can be leaders, and they can be leaders of the next, the next steps that are so needed in our world. And so I encourage and invite our viewers to consider being those leaders and mentors in our school systems, in our children and youth programs, through counseling, peer support, volunteering. This is community building. This is mindfulness in action. And as we've mentioned, there are so many ways that each one of us can support. And as women, when we get together, we got this. So I encourage the women out there listening that, to go out there in the community and find a way to be that mentor, that leader, and that wonderful person that children and youth are so need to follow the next step so they can be empowered to be leaders of our world. Especially now more than ever, stats are showing kids and youth have gone through so much stress, and they've been so traumatized with the changes in the world. And so having that leadership to help them get through is really a great way to take that action forward in positive ways. Thank you.
All right, Angela, your time in.
So I really loved what Bilan brought forth, but it also ties into what Marlo mentioned when she spoke last. And for me, what is being birthed is love. And when we think about a community response to an environmental disaster, that is love in action. But at another level, we would all benefit if love was brought into business. Because, and I'm not talking about romantic love, I'm talking about the love for humanity, the love for this earth, the love for this beautiful planet that supports us and sustains us. And when business can approach, instead of looking at the bottom line dollar, but saying, is this good for humanity? Is this good for the planet? When we have that kind of love, we won't need these discussions. And so my call to action is just to encourage people to choose from their heart as opposed from their mind.
Okay. Dr. Kat?
Okay, well, I love love, but I want to get us back to some of the things we were talking about in terms of where's the money and who's able to get it. We had some people talking about the funding that was out there for COVID. And by the way, funding for climate as well. Who's getting the money? Who's actually understanding the processes by which we get the money? Okay, and often women are not getting it. We're smaller home-based businesses, and that's become more acceptable, and that's great. But you look at the personal development industry, a lot of that was started by women working from home, taking in things that they had learned and creating their own little tiny businesses, right? But once that model was proven, once the market was proven, once people saw you can make money, the larger companies are men. The people who are getting investment are men, right? We see a lot in the e-medicine. We see, counseling, all these, there's apps you can get for your coaching and counseling, and it's covered by insurance. It's no longer considered alternative. But who are the people sitting at home doing the counseling session, doing the coaching sessions, probably not getting paid very much? And who are the people who own businesses that are making money off? So we need to think about how do we advance women, making sure that women are getting the investments, making sure women are learning how to take those steps to get their businesses in a place where they are eligible for funding. By the way, here in the US, in normal times, one in every $5, 20% of the economy, the entire economy, is just federal spending on things that the federal government needs to buy to do the things that the federal government does. And that doesn't even count the state and local governments. And because of the way our contracting laws work, many of the contracting requirements also apply to private companies that do business with the government. And most big businesses work with the government. So if you don't understand government contracting, I mean, this is something I've been trying to do with some of the online marketing systems that have been developed in the coaching space, in the coaching industry, that is all direct to consumer, right? It's all individuals. But a lot of those processes also work in the government contracting space, but you need to be able to adapt. You need to be able to think about how do we get those larger contracts? Otherwise, we have individual coaches saying, look, I've got this great process. And then someone says, oh, I can get money and I can create a business to sell your process. Either take it from you, get your license, or just pay you a little pittance here while I make all the money. Right? We need to wise up
to that. All right, thank you. Doctor, we're going to go to Dr. Nkoko and then Yolisa, and then we're going to head on to question number 4. And if you would keep your comments to about 15 to 20 seconds. Dr. Nkoko. We cannot hear you, Dr. Nkoko.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Love, peace, joy, and happiness is what we dream about, and we want that. Now we need positive mindset above the current situation and the reality. The reality in South Africa is that social businesses like us consultants, we lost business because we consult with big companies. Professional services, we were the first to be cut out. No training and development services. That was taken as luxury. So we were cut out, we didn't have payments, no business. Youth is behind scenes, no jobs. And then we had to look, what can I sell online? It means I must sell to somebody who is able to be online. And now we need to support again people with skills and development to be entrepreneurs. And that kind of reality, we have to face reality. We have to be composed and become positive mindset and say, who can help me? Who can come on board? I have the ability and the time, but I don't have the ways to go forward. Now we need to come together and say, big business, if you have social development access, give it to me. I have a foundation, I can facilitate it. So we need that at this time. Reality must play. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yolisa?
Thanks, Yvonne. The one thing I want to mention is the fact that, we shouldn't forget that in accounting, which is one of my industry, there's something that's been added that's called sustainable reporting, which then includes reports on what the environment that the business is operating in. So businesses have to mindfully, go into activities that will ensure that their future is extended. So when they report to the shareholders must be there to say, what are you doing to make sure your industry, operates in a way that will ensure that the future is still going to give us more and more, returns on our investments. So people can hold their businesses that they invest in accountable for them to do something to avoid the effects of climate change.
Okay, well, thank you for that. That leads us, that was a very robust Q&A and a very robust response. And I'm very certain that this next question, which is our last and final question for the panel for today, And this is going to deal with how does women's equality fit into climate change. And the order that we're going to go in is going to be Dr. Ornika Shirley, Vera Thomas, Bailan Mahino, Nasike Nkoko, Marla Mans, Ann Metcalf, and Danielle Bengano. So we're going to begin with Dr. Ornika Shirley in her position on how does women's equality fit into climate change.
Thank you. That's a great question. And women's equality fit into climate change because we are the ones that make the world go round. And I think that there are a couple of areas that we should be mindful of, and that is new and improved technologies as well as access to finances. Because we can have a lot of ideas, but we know where there is no money, there's really not a lot of change. So there should be some initiatives where we have access, equal opportunities to access information, technologies, because we are somewhat behind because we have been limited the access and we are heavily dependent upon needing that access in order to make sound decisions, in order to be able to be proactive and not reactive. And if we don't have that opportunity for equal information, equal opportunities, we will not be able to make a impactful change. And so I think it's vital that we make some noise, make those bold actions, take bold actions to be able to access that information. And we will do that by locking arms and showing up in record numbers, because new technologies, improved technologies, and finance initiatives will be necessary for change to take place.
Thank you for that. I'd like to now go over to Vera Thomas. Ms. Thomas, what can you tell us? How does women's equality fit into climate change?
You know, women equality fits into so many things. And when we think about it and understand that where women have, and this is research that I kind of looked at, where women have higher social and political status, their countries have a 12% lower COE emission. And women have gotten into the forefront of voting and getting out the vote and all of those kinds of things and being elected. Studies have also shown that they lead in environmental and social legislation when elected in public office. So these are critical issues and things that women have got to continue to be a part of. We've got to engage in politics. We've got to engage in all these things that are going to impact on climate, impact on our lives. And of course, I think often about the climate of the home and the impact that climate change has on families and the impact that it has had on all the things that are happening. And right now, my heart and my mind is really on the women in Ukraine who have stepped up to the plate in the midst of such devastation. And, you know, they are the ones that are, many of them are in the forefront fighting. And so we rule the world. We rule. And so we have to stay in the forefront. We cannot allow anyone to try to keep us back. And you talked about collaboration and you talked about the children. This has been an awesome panel. Let me tell you, all of you are just absolutely awesome. You know, and what was said about the kids. And when you consider The second cause of death for 10-year-olds to 34-year-olds is suicide.
Absolutely, yes.
That's an issue. And so we as women have got to do our part to change the climate and to change the world and to change our families.
Yes, thank you. And so we're going to take that with us, that energy, and we're going to take that over to Bailan Mahino for your position. How does women's equality fit into climate change?
Well, it's because we are. We are. That's how we fit. We have equal responsibility, and because we have equal responsibility for what happens on this planet, we require equality in all ways. You know, all of the roles have changed, the lines have blurred, and all of the women that I see around the world are gravely concerned about where are we going. So it's time for us to really step up and step in as the equal partners on what happens to the world. So we have to look at who are we? We're the daughters, we're the sisters, the mothers, the wives, we're the employees, we are the employers, we're the leaders of the businesses and organizations, we're the scientists, we're the engineers. We help run this place. We help make it grow. And so in all of our decisions, in all of these spaces, we are aware of the long-term effects of what we're doing. We think of our children, we think of our families, we think of our communities, we think about our legacy, we think about the planet. Because as women, for millennia, we have gathered. We've gathered by the river, we've gathered around the fire, we have gathered at the wells, and we continue to. Because this is where we are nourished, so we can turn around and nourish others. We witness our lives, we witness our struggles, and then we look for solutions. As equal partners in this world, we look for solutions because we know how to work together. We know how to take care of the greater good. We know how to step into the cycles of life because we live those every single month. Every single day we are aware, how does life work? We find what works for us. Because we know very deep in our hearts, we are stewards of the planet. We are stewards of the future. We are the ones who help to shape the thinking that happens, that comes out in our children who are now learning STEM and are the future. They are the future. They are coming up with the designs and with the creations. So why shouldn't we have an equal voice? Why shouldn't we? We should, right? We have to step into it. We have to step into it because we can think holistically. It's not just one or another or a few. We think holistically, and that is how we can help the planet. We have to raise our voices because we are equal stewards here. Equal stewards. Claim that, act on that. If necessary, demand to be heard. And step in. Step in. That's what we're here to do because we do it so well.
Okay. And now I'd like to go over to Marlo Mans to chime in on this question. How does women's equality fit into climate change?
Women equality fit because it's steadily moving. It has not stopped. It's not stagnant. It is built up on the past, and the past has continually shown women with ideals and creativity that are moving into positions, not just political positions, but positions within finance. And that is important for women. And when you have that continual movement, and you know that these women have raised men, they look at their mothers, they look at them, and they prepare. They don't just sit back. They look and they prepare for the future. And you cannot get anywhere without not having any preparation. Preparation is key into moving forward. And that is equality in that alone. When you prepare for your future and when you take steps to make sure each step is on solid ground, guess what? You move to the next step. And women are doing that. They're not just sitting home standing still. They know what they put in their children is for good, so that other women coming along, including their sisters, their mothers, their aunts, their grandmothers, has to be supported. And it has to be supported by having an equal mindset for the better good, for the brotherly love. Love is not weak. Love is the most powerful thing on this planet. Love never fails, and it keeps going until it gets what it has to get in order for it to be a balance. And we're working for balance here. We're working, and women are moving in places that I have never thought of. When I was a little girl, women couldn't even drive a bus. Look where they are at now. The equality is growing, but it's growing because women and their emotions and their creativity and their influence on their family and their community and in finance, guess what? It is working out. It's not easy, and it has to be step by step, but love is not going to stop. It's going to keep turning just like the earth is. And I believe really deep within my heart that we will see it. Who thought we would see a vice president as a woman? You know, it's things that you have to realize, that love does not stand still. It works.
Okay.
It keeps pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. And
Okay.
guess what? We
It
there.
keeps pushing. Love keeps on pushing. All right. All right. Well, we're going to switch over to Ann Metcalf, and we're going to hear from her on how does women's equality fit into climate change?
Oh, good question, Yvonne. Thank you. And what everybody has said here is fabulous, is fantastic, because all of that is important. And I'm going to just present a slightly different perspective because I'm, food security, I think for me is really important. And we think about women and how they are the caregivers of their families. They are becoming business people. I mean, we've got women up in space, and we've got women doing all sorts of things in leadership roles, and yet they are the main core of the family. Where I live, I do the shopping, I do the cooking, and in some countries, they are actually doing the farming. So they're out there in the fields and they're nourishing their families with the best they can. We've heard that in some countries, water is an issue. So how do you grow food, healthy food, when you don't have water? So where are the solutions? And maybe that's a global women's initiative to come, that how are we going to get water to these countries and communities where they don't have it, and they need food. I mean, without food, we can't be nourished. And something that I've been looking at recently is this regenerative farming. And we don't do the tilling anymore because it's destroying the soil. And without a healthy soil, we're not having healthy food. So we think we're feeding our family and we are nourishing them with something. But when we do the regenerative farming, you've got more green space, and that actually impacts the climate change. And it's going to be one solution to reducing the carbon in the atmosphere, because the soil, the green in the soil, the earth, collects the carbon and takes it out of the atmosphere into the soil. And then that creates freedom for the oceans, and maybe Dr. Cat could speak to that more. But so the oceans release the carbon into the oxygen. So you've got this beautiful synergistic system going on. And if we can get more regenerative farming all over the planet, the United States is 5%. How can we, in smaller communities where they don't have the technology, how can we bring that to their community? So one, those women can be leaders in new kinds of farming, and create businesses out of it. And I mean, it just be very expansive.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Did we, Danielle Bengano, is she still with us? I think she has, yes, she had to, she had another engagement that she had to go to. What I'm going to do now is I want to go over and find out from our global connector. She deals with women all over the world, and she connects them on different areas in different ways and what have you. And we heard from this woman first, and she's going to also have the last word on the particular topic before we bring it out into the open. And that's Jackie Zaccoli. And I want to share something with you here. And I'll probably get, well, she can't touch me because I'm in Atlanta and she's in Arizona, so she can't touch me.
I got my ways, Yvonne. I got my ways.
Okay, and I believe it, and I believe it. Okay, I believe it. Jackie slipped one in on us. Jackie, as a young woman, after college, she decided, well, she could have went and got her executive secretary. She had her degrees and everything. Could have went and got her nice executive secretary, executive administrator, and went up the top. And she'd have been sitting at the top of industry by now. But she didn't. She took the road less traveled, you know, the one that mom said, don't go down, I'm pretty sure. And that was, she went into the Peace Corps. And so there, and the rest is history on all the things that she has done. She simply became a humanitarian. And what I want you to do is we're going to all say this together, and it's on the tape, and that is a happy birthday to Jackie. Jackie turned, look at this beautiful woman. She turned 77 in February. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Yvonne, I'll get you yet. I'll get you yet.
Oh my God.
I have to keep applauding her. I know she's going to get me, but I have to keep applauding her because she's got more energy than I don't know where. You know, I'm in here taking B12 every hour on hour.
Oh, you brat.
So I'll learn how to do that. So Jackie, how does women's equality fit into climate change? We talk about women being equal. Bylon gave us a good measure that we're equal. Everybody here spoke. Marlo talked about the love, but how does it fit into climate change? I mean, it's almost like every other week or month or year, we're fighting for someone else, something else, and then equality kind of looks like it gets put on the back burner, and we got to take up arms and go, you know, and do something else. Put out another fire or something, put out another disaster, stop another war. And looks like equality constantly gets pushed to the back. And then, you know, it kind of comes up a little bit when we get a little bit of quiet. So I want to ask you the question, yes, it is, how does it fit into climate change? But I'm going to take it a step further because I know that you're well versed in this. And that is, how do we keep women's equality in the forefront, not only of climate change, but just in the forefront, period?
Great question. And you know, I love to look at all of it and come up with a solution. You're so cool, Yvonne, as much as you're a little brat about the whole birthday thing. I mentor youth in 10 countries. And As far as I'm concerned, the youth are the answer. And they are so passionate about their environment. God only knows how that ever happened, literally. And the hope and the passion needs to have tools, needs to have awareness of how they can actually make it in their countries. So if you look at the whole world, I only know, well, it's about 15 or 20 countries at this point, but the concept is they really want to learn. And I think that what the important thing is that everyone on this call has a responsibility to mentor someone. Each of you have amazing brilliance within you of the construction and patchwork of your past. And yet, how many of us really are aware of that ability? And the coaches on this call could stimulate that in so many ways. We have the answers. The answers are all within each and every one of us. We don't need to continue to try to figure out how can I be better, this, that, or the other. We each have the answers. And what we know can inspire people all over the globe. I think of the example, I talk to a gal in Shanghai every week. I have taken her from before children, before marriage, to what she's doing now. She loves to listen to me, although our cultures are completely opposite. Their whole scheme of things is totally different than ours, but she loves to listen. And I couldn't tell you, Cameroon, and you know this one, Yvonne, they are just so hungry for some answers. And we have the answers, ladies. And how many times in this entire conversation has it been brought up? Leadership. Get out there. Do what you can. It doesn't mean I haven't traveled from my home. I couldn't tell you when, but I've traveled to other sides of the world because of communication, because of what we now have available that we didn't have before. There's so many ways to reach other people because you have the answers. You just need to listen within you. Global change as far as climate, you know it, you can see it, you can feel it, you can experience it. Almost every single one of you said that it's there. Again, you know the answers. You have them. You need to be vocal and to mentor others so that they would even know about it or find out what they find as an answer. I don't care how old they are. Pay attention and mentor. That's my answer to the whole thing.
Okay. I love it. I love it. Pay attention and mentor people. Yes, everyone needs a mentor, and we have so many beautiful and dynamic mentors here. I would allow each of you, if you want to, we are actually ahead of time, so it gives us about a good about 7-8 minutes to kind of chime in on the question of equality or any of the other questions that you may want to return to and have a and have a comment on.
No, I don't.
May I chime in, Yvonne?
Yes, Nasike?
Oh, Oh, yes, thanks, because
There you
I
are.
heard you
Okay.
called, yes, you called me earlier, but I didn't speak. Thank you. Yes, I just want to say women are wonderful, outstanding, meticulous, exotic naturers. That's what we are naturally when you look at women who we are right here on the platform. And the essence of Ubuntu is carried by women. Ubuntu is humanitarian in essence of love from the womb, where we carry them from the womb. Those that we say they are great leaders, they came from us and we nurtured them. And if we can speak to them, they listen. So women are these beings that need to be included in the decision-making desk, in the boardrooms. That's where we need to be. That's why we train women for boards, where I'm at right now. And that it brings in women as strong transformational leaders, not just leaders, but leaders with power to lead with integrity. That's what is missing around the world. If all presidents had integrity and empathy and knowledge that another person is a human being, there would not be killings, there would not be robbing people from their upper desks, because corruption is robbing and God hates robbery. And that's injustice. He calls it injustice. And if a woman is there and collaborating and doing that with women, then that woman is not a just woman, because she falls under a wrong spirit of moving along with those who are robbing the whole human race. Now, for people to live, we have to raise our bars to love so we can live as we live in the now, to leave a great legacy. If we match the youth that we are mentoring right now with a coach that has experience of integrity, not just an experience. We see leaders, we see women who are doing wrong things in positions of leadership, in parliamentary positions, and they stand there. People voted for them. They are earning from people's taxes, but they are not doing what they were voted there to do for the people. So we need women of righteousness who can stand up for their communities, who can stand up for people, who can stand up for orphans who don't even have mothers when they cry. We need people who will stand up for people who are needy, real needy, but have all the resources. Bring in the resources to the people and match the coaches with the right coaches, coach and coachee, mentor and mentee. And as we collaborate internationally with different cultures, let's be humble to respect each other. You have something I don't know. I have something in Africa you don't know. We can learn from each other. We come with a position of neutrality so we can trust each other. And then we can learn with love from each other, not coming to tell me from another country and say, no, you are in Africa and you don't know. I know. I want to hear what you know, and I can share what I know. I only didn't have enough resources like you in the developed country. So bring in what you have, I bring in my strength and discernment. Women in the positions of leadership have a discerning spirit and wisdom. So when they lead with a mind and a heart and empathy, so when you bring them in that position, let it be a righteous woman. One woman in a board or organization or community can make a difference, one, with that God has put in us. So let us be that light in the city as women, wherever we are. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Dr. Kat, I see your hand.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone on this panel. It's really been a beautiful array of perspectives but I wanted to share particularly on this question of women's equality related to climate from the perspective of someone who's worked in the climate industry. And for years, there have been more women going into STEM fields, more women going into sustainable finance, and all the critical areas that are necessary to address these issues. And often when women go into these fields, engineering, finance, science, what have you, they're doing it from those environmental, sustainability, bigger picture perspectives. And we have those opportunities to get the degrees, but the degrees are only a ticket to the dance. And then we get into these companies that are extremely both male and masculine in the ways in which things are run, in the ways in which decisions are made. And which, for me, that's great. I love that very rational, logical, analytical approach. But the problem is where there is bias, where there is harassment, where assault, things happen in a lot of our water related and environmental related organizations. And women are told to stay quiet. You don't want to jeopardize your career. Don't say anything, get paid off and go away. Or, men will get a slap on the wrist and they get to continue their careers. And a lot of women we're losing so many women in these fields. I can't even begin to tell you how many women get the degrees, but the retention levels are horrible. Some of the things are changing, some of the work conditions, more work-life balance, more men want to be active parents. So it's not just all the guys having stay-at-home wives. There's been more equality in that respect, although I think COVID really opened up people to the fact that women are still doing that second job at home, even while they're in these very demanding STEM-based fields, right? So there's tremendous pressures, and when issues come up, we're not addressing them. Now, one of the reasons I'm in the position I'm in now is I was working for a large firm. I was the first woman eligible to be considered for an associate at a global firm. And it was in an office where men were just blatant in their disrespect, disregard, not supporting project work, not, for me and the women that I was supervising. Basically, I was brought into that office because all the men had been promoted, and all the lower level positions, the data collectors and the model runners and the report writers, the younger engineers were women. So, we're seeing a lot of that. And what's happening right now, this is a time of year we see a lot of International Women's Day, introduce girls to STEM and all this stuff. And a lot of women are starting to say, no, break the bias. We're done. We're not just going to have one day a year, 1 month a year, where we run around saying, yeah, isn't it great? Let's celebrate women. Yeah, let's get women into STEM. But why get into women into STEM and into climate related fields if we're not going to have the opportunity to become leaders in those fields? If we're not going to have an opportunity to say, we should be able to go in an office where we don't have to deal with discrimination and harassment. And so where those issues come up, and it's not everyone, obviously, most guys are great, love working with men. But when those issues come up, we're not handling them well. And it's costing us so much talent of these women who are leaving the industry, or when they do leave to raise families, they're not allowed to come back. We have to address these issues. We're giving women, women are getting the degrees, but they're not getting the opportunities in their career. We need to address that problem if we want to keep women in the climate sector.
Okay. Marlo Mans, can we hear from you? I see you have your hand up.
Yes. I agree with everything I just heard Dr. Katz say. And it is true that there is segments where women have to push more than others, but that doesn't mean that they can't do it. And it also means that they have to somewhat write their path. And they have to, what I do for my children that I work with, interactive love course. And one of the things I teach them is that love has no fear. And if it's something that you want, you find a way to write your path to get past that fear. I don't care if you have to collaborate someone. I don't care if you have to take an extra course. Love has no fear and you can do it. And I don't let those little girls back down and make excuses of not pushing toward the love that they want to have. And it's not that they cannot have it. So what? There has been David and Goliath. You be David and you get what you came to get. This is your earth too. And in my books, I make sure that they know it's our earth and it belongs to you. And I want to say to you, Anne, I wanted to say earlier, you were saying that children, as far as land and as far as planning, in my course, I make sure that children plant a plant. Each of them have a little plant when they finish with my interactive love course. And they know that earth belongs to them and that earth is a giver and that they have to be a giver. And if it's meant for you to go for a position that might upset a few men, so what? Get what you came to get, and that is your love and your time on this journey. It's your journey. Don't let nobody take it from you. Thank you.
Okay. Excellent, excellent. I see Dr. Joy came back to us. I want to ask if she would, from the SAGE's perspective on women's equality in climate change.
Well, the first thing, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
We had a surge here in Florida talk about climate change. Our climate shifted immediately. So in any case, when it comes to women's equality, you have to see yourself as equal. The first thing is your mindset. Once you see yourself as equal, then you can take the action steps necessary to claim your equality. So whether it's starting like say gardening, starting your own backyard. When I was going to Barbados, we had a kitchen garden. That was just common. That's very powerful. Start where you're at, and then bring women along with you. If people see you as being equal, it's infectious, right? And they start to see, well, I can do this for myself as well. So I think women's equality is critical to the success of this planet. Because listen, guys, if nobody's gonna save this planet, you have to save this planet. Make sense?
Makes sense. Makes sense. Okay, ladies. Well, I think that for our very first, and this has just been monumental for the Lifesavers Ambassadors International USA. For our premier roundtable, you all have made this just such a glowing success, and I want to thank you for that. The last thing that I will do is I will introduce those of the ambassadors, who are on the panel. These women work tirelessly as ambassadors, working on issues within their own countries and outside of their countries as well. And so I'd like to introduce you to myself, Yvonne Gamble, and I am the USA Country Director. The Deputy Country Director is Ambassador Jackie Zaccoli, and she is the Deputy Country Director for the International Ambassadors. We have our Director of Asian Affairs, and that is Bailan Mahino, and she handles all of our Asian countries and those issues that come from within those countries. We have Ambassador Angela Lee with us, and she is actually our Director of Internal Affairs. And she came on board and is taking on, she is out of New Mexico, but she's taken on interior affairs for the United States. And that is, as we know, we have a very high indigenous population. And one of the main issues that she's working on right now is we talked a lot about that here, about communications, and that is in helping and to assist them with getting broadband communications put into all of their areas where they are. Because if you thought it was hard, as Dr. Robin may have mentioned, for you to get communication because the tower is down. Just think about it, where there is no tower and you're still communicating on landline, and most of the world, you are watching them go by and they're on cellular and digital and moving on further to satellite communications, and you're still with the dial-up phone and some with no phone. So we thank her very much for taking on that as our ambassador. And then we also, we have Dr. Nasike Nkoko. She's out of South Africa, and she is our diplomatic liaison to the continent of Africa. And so she definitely keeps us intact, in line, you know, with not only diplomatic relations there and how we are supposed to, you know, actually govern ourselves, and the humbleness and the regulatory. And, you know, she makes certain that we know when to bow and when to curtsy, and, you know, when to walk away and when to run. And then who the young lady who came on with us for a moment out of Paris, and that was Danielle Bengano. And she's actually our ambassador out of Europe. And she actually is for Europe as well as for Cameroon, because Cameroon is her home country. So the ambassadors, thank you. We extend our hearts out to you for, you know, coming and being a part of this. And I thank all of those who have been a part of the actual United Nations Commission on the Status of Women, the CSW 66, the 66th convening. This information here is very vital. And this will go a long way into telling, not only telling the story, but into actionable items. And many of you have spoke about those things, and I could feel your frustrations at the fact that, you know, we don't want to just simply have conversations. We want to now, you know, put together what's our plan of action, how we're going to get this done, and then how we can keep communications going amongst us to say, this is what's happening, this is what's going, here's the access, this is where it is. That's how we get it done, ladies. And you all have the wherewithal, and you all have, as Jackie has said, you all have the answers. And so therefore, let's not keep those answers to ourselves. Let's get them out there in the forefront and put them forward. And so that concludes our very first Lifesavers Ambassadors International USA Roundtable. We want to thank you, and we are now concluded.